Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of Fiduciary Fitness. I'm your host, Tom Lavaroni, Retirement Plan Specialist at FWFG. In today's episode, we're going to answer the question, what is a fiduciary? But first, a quick word from the good folks at Compliance.
The opinions voiced in this program are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advice offered through Global Retirement Partners LLC, a registered investment advisor. Global Retirement Partners, LPL Financial and Washington Financial Group are separate non-affiliated entities.
And now, on to the show. I'm joined today by Joe Denoyer, Chief Executive Officer of WFG.
Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Joe. And I'm also joined by Colin Clark, Retirement Plan Specialist at WFG.
Hey, Tom.
Good morning. Today, we are going to talk about fiduciary. Let's start off with, what is a fiduciary?
In the true sense of the word, fiduciary is somebody who has responsibility for another party. When we talk about that in retirement plans, it's usually somebody at the organization or the organization itself that is responsible to make decisions and act in the best interest of its employees or eligible participants, as we call them in the 401k plan.
And really, it's anyone who's making a decision on what vendors are going to be used in the retirement plan as well. Whether or not you're going to be hiring them or firing them, you're acting in a way that you're making decisions on behalf of those employees.
And to add on not only vendors, but also the fund menu and some of the key decisions about plan design. So think of it somebody who's responsible for making a majority of the decisions for their folks in a retirement plan, and that responsibility is a large one.
So it could be a group of people, not just one person. It's a number of people could be a fiduciary in a plan.
Absolutely. And I think one of the big questions is, if I'm on the board of directors, could I be considered a fiduciary? Depending on the role I have at the organization, it just could be a natural function of my job responsibility.
How do they keep track of that, or how does the company keep track of that? Do they write that down? Do they have rules, or who determines the fiduciary on a plan?
Well, generally you have a named individual or individuals, 2 or 3, that are actually trustees in the plan that have some fiduciary oversight or fiduciary responsibility. And then most of the time we see our clients that have an actual retirement plan committee, and it's very important, in our opinion, for the committee to realize to determine if they are a fiduciary or not. Are they acting in a fiduciary capacity, which for the most part, most of them are.
And we get a lot of questions around, who makes up a retirement plan committee, and I know that we'll discuss that more in length in another podcast. But really the idea that you want to make sure that the people that are on that committee know that they're a fiduciary. It's really important, because you could have people from all parts of the organization that aren't necessarily in an administrative capacity on a day-to-day basis.
I mean, fiduciary could be a scary word. Who would want to volunteer to be a fiduciary on a plan, or does that open them up to possible legal issues, penalties, trouble? Why would someone want to be a fiduciary?
Well, that's really true, and again, you want to make sure you have the proper amount of fiduciary liability insurance too. And again, not to get too deep into that right now, but those are some considerations. There is definitely a liability. Your own personal assets can be at risk. And so you want to watch out, that you know what you're getting into.
And, you use the word, who would volunteer to be a fiduciary? I don't think anybody would volunteer to be a fiduciary in this capacity. But what happens in, reality, or what happens in the marketplace is, somebody's hired, they work their way through that specific role, and next thing you know, their position in and of itself kind of defaults them into the retirement committee, or they're an HR generalist, and suddenly they start to be a specialist, and one day you wake up and somebody says, congratulations, you're now in charge of our 401k plan.
So it kind of falls on their lap.
You didn't raise your hand to do it. So it really is important for those individuals to have the appropriate training and understanding, because we don't want to use this word fiduciary in a bad, it's not a bad word. It just comes with additional responsibilities. And if you manage those responsibilities and have a process to manage those responsibilities, it doesn't necessarily have to be this evil word fiduciary. It's actually most HR people and people in finance and that are working with benefits for their employees, want to do the right thing by their employees, and they're looking to do the best thing in the interest of the organization and their employees. So they're probably doing it already. It's just getting a little bit better understanding of how serious this responsibility is when you are dealing with employees' retirement assets.
Could we maybe get in a little bit more detail in terms of being a fiduciary? I mean, what would, if somebody came up to the HR person and said, all right, yeah, I'm happy to act as a fiduciary in your plan, do they have to go through some formal training, or what kind of roles do they have to go to meetings? Do they choose the investment lineup? What exactly would a fiduciary be doing?
Well, that's really the perfect question, right? And so when we do our fiduciary training series, or we have our seminars that we run into people, and they really don't understand that they're in a fiduciary capacity. And so what we want to do is we want to walk them through and help them understand, what types of duties are they performing, whether it be compliance related, administrative things like that, where they may be making decisions. Again, it's about making decisions on who helps with the plan, what the record keeper, the administrator, the compliance people. You're making those decisions on behalf of a large group of people, and so there's going to be a responsibility that you're exercising good due diligence in deciding who's working with you.
Okay. You had mentioned training. How often do you see someone actually trained to handle 401k plans?
Well, I think if you speak with an auditor, auditors are asking for this information, and so you want to have some proof that you went through a formal training. And that's, I know at WFG we run 10 trainings a year. Really, we have some people that come to several. Really, you just want to make sure that you've shown the auditors, the investigators, whoever you're dealing with, that yes, I have received some level of fiduciary training.
And I would also add to that, not only that are outside sources, but when you're dealing with your retirement plan, I say to most of the folks that we bump into that, hey, you also should ask your current folks you're working with, the vendors, the record keeper, if you have an advisor or consultant, your third-party administrator, ask about if they have any training opportunities, because many times they do, and folks just don't know to ask for it. But overall, there is training out there. Again, we pride ourselves at WFG with the workshops that we provide, but there are so many others out there. So I think it's really important to, one, understand if you're on a committee or if you're a fiduciary, one, is get that understanding what that means. And then number two, kind of draw a roadmap of how you're going to obtain training for your overall committee to make sure that everybody understands where they are and some of the things they can do to mitigate some of the risk.
Okay, great. Thank you guys for joining us today. Again, we talked about what is a fiduciary, and really if they are people who are touching the plan, making decisions on the plan, and I guess I think one of the keys is to make sure that they are acting in the best interest of their participants. That will help to solidify that and meet their fiduciary.
That is the key.
Yeah, and meet their fiduciary responsibilities. Again, thank you for listening. If you have a question that you'd like us to address in the future episode, please shoot us an email at info@washfinancial.com. That's info@washfinancial.com. Again, thanks for listening to the Washington Financial Group's Fiduciary Fitness podcast. Connect with us at washfinancial.com. If you enjoy our show, we'd love for you to subscribe on iTunes or wherever you access your podcasts. Until next time.